Welcome back to another week of having me instead of Brad for your Wednesday nights. And we're going to go on the first day to the Goliath Must Fall series, which is the book study I am studying throughout this whole summer. And probably the last week I'll do something else as well, just whatever Brad wants me to do. I might do like a Sunday or who knows. But before we get started, I want to read this verse to you, which is 1 Peter 5:8-9. Which is to be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary and devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same kinds of suffering are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. So please read 1 Samuel 17:1-9. But before you read that, I want you to just have a little story that I want to tell. A college student, he works at a camp in South Carolina, and one of his jobs at the camp, besides like doing rec team and all this stuff, one of his jobs is to get rid of snakes. And more importantly, he wants to get rid of the snakes that are by the shower house or bath house or whatever you want to call it. So the kids walking back and forth didn't want to like get bit on the foot or bit on the leg or anything like that. And so whenever they see a snake, him and maybe two other workers or something like that, they would slowly crawl up to the snake. They would step right by its head so the snake couldn't turn around and bite their leg or anything. And what they would do is they would pull the back side of the snake until its head popped up. And that's how they killed it. The reason for that is so there's almost no chance of getting bit at all. And once the head of the snake got popped off, they would bury the snake's head. Now, why would you bury the snake's head for? That's a good question. So the reasoning for that is if a kid was walking to the shower house and let's say he wasn't wearing any shoes or flip-flops or anything, he could accidentally step on that snake's fang. And there could be still enough poison in that fang of the snake to kill that kid or could do serious harm to the kid. That's why they buried the snake's head. And we can look at that snake's head as just like Satan. When Jesus died on the cross and defeated sin, defeated death by raising again, that doesn't mean Satan's completely gone. There's still the head of Satan there. And with that, we should be looking around and we shouldn't be like, hey, Satan's gone. No, we need to be having a watchful eye, being careful, and just saying, hey, I don't want to mess up. I don't want to sin. I don't want to step on that fang. I don't want to do any of that. And I just want you to keep that through your mind. So what I'd like you to do right now is read 1 Samuel 17:1-9, and I'll get back to you and we'll talk about it. Right. Thank you for reading 1 Samuel 17:1-9, and just a little setting for it. So this is before David is fighting Goliath, before David even meets Goliath and any of that. So the Philistines, the army, they haven't lost too long ago, but when they're meeting up with the Israelites, they are like slowly getting on a roll. Like they've won 2 battles, 3 battles, 4 battles, and so they're going up to the Israelites. And so during this time, in verses 1 and 2, we are going to be seeing that the Philistines have reached over into Israel's territory, which is huge because that is God's territory. And if the Israelites stayed faithful to God, the Philistines would have never even stepped on to their territory. Closest they would have ever gotten would be the border. But because they were unfaithful, the Philistines, they were taking land by land just over and over again until King Saul was finally like, hey, we need to build an army. We need to stop them. And so they gathered an army, gathered a group of people, after so much territory was lost, and they stopped right at this hilly area. And as we go into verse 3, it talks about this hilly area. So we got the Philistines up here, we got the Israelites down here. The issue is that there's a big dip right here. And this dip is just, it's such a huge gap going down that no army could go all the way over to the other side and have a pretty easy time winning that battle. But they were so close to each other that you could hear the other group laughing and screaming and just chanting out things all the way from your side. That was how close they were, but that deep of a gap, that was the issue. And so when we go into verses 4 through 6, it talks about Goliath and how big he was. And I just want to specify little things with just how big he was and what he had and everything. So Goliath was 6 cubits span. 6 cubits today goes 9'9". That is a tall dude. Like, that is a tall man. An illustration, let's say like a basketball rim with how high that is. This is probably the difference between his head and the basketball rim. Like, it's not that big of a difference. And so first off, Goliath is 9'9". And with him being that tall, he was also wearing a coat of mail that weighed 5,000 shekels, which added up to being 90 pounds of armor. And that's pretty heavy armor. That's like pretty thick, nice armor. And so with him being 9'9", wearing 90 pounds of armor, along with the helmet, Goliath, he was a pretty scary dude. He was pretty scary, I'm not gonna lie. And so as we go on to verse 7, it talks about his spear. It talks about how he had a weaver beam, or the whole part of the spear was with just the tip of it being a iron tip, but a weaver beam was about 2.5 inches thick. So it's about that thick. And the spear itself was about 12 to 15 feet long, which that's a pretty long spear. That's almost pole vaulting long, which if you've ever done pole vaulting, those sticks they can get pretty lengthy. And so the tip of the spear, which was made of iron, was 15 pounds. And he also had a man right next to him that was holding a shield, which I don't know why, since he's that big and that strong, that he wanted a guy wearing a shield. Maybe it was like another intimidation factor, which, I mean, I don't think he needed that. He was pretty intimidating as it was. But so Goliath, he's a beast. He 9'9", 90 pounds of armor, 2.5 thick, like thickness of the spear, with it being 12 to 15 feet long spear. That's insane. That's like, I would not want to go against that kind of guy. And so in these next couple of verses, going through verses 8 and 9, we could see Goliath, he's screaming out for a challenger. And he doesn't just scream out once, for just one day and then David goes out there. No, he's ranting out, hey, I want someone to fight me. Whoever wins gets to control the other army. If I win, you guys, we own you. And if you win, we will all be slaves to you. And so this wasn't like a one-day thing. So Goliath, every time he wanted a challenger, he was on his side, okay? And every time he ranted out a challenger, he'd go down. The next day, he'd go down again, screaming, down, down. Eventually, he got about right up to here, going up to their side of the hill before David went down. And this story, which, I mean, just thinking about Goliath and how big he was, this story is very interesting because usually whenever we read this kind of story, we think of David as us. But in this story, we're not David. Jesus is David, and we are the Israelites. Because without David or without Jesus, we would never be able to defeat our Goliath. Honestly, we would lose. We can't win by ourselves. And so, like, as we just read all that, we can think to ourselves, if we try fighting our Goliath alone, if we try fighting our battle alone, we may step on that fang and we may start sinning again. We don't know, I don't know what your Goliath is. I know what mine is, and everybody has something in their life that they need to change. But you can only change it with David or with Jesus, okay? So I have a couple questions for you today, just to think about and just kind of process it. So the first question is, who were you 5 years from today? Not your name, but like, who were you? Were you that terrible kid that no one liked? Were you that great kid up front, but behind the scenes you were not so great? Second question is, what do you want to be in the next 5 years? What do you want to be? For me personally, I would love to be a pastor. I would love to have my own church somewhere and just either be a youth pastor or pastor somewhere. I would love that. Where do you want to be? And the final question is, what can you do to change yourself in order to become what you want to be in the next 5 years? That could be a huge question for some of you seniors. That could be a ginormous question, especially like for juniors going into your senior year, because that goes all the way throughout your college years. And without Jesus, I honestly can't say that you will get exactly where you want to be without him. And just God has a plan for your life. And as long as if you know that, I think you will know where your next 5 years are going to be if you have him. Thank you for watching this. And next Wednesday, I hope that we will be together pretty soon. Who knows? Fingers crossed. But thank you again, and I hope to see you next week. All right.